Well, welcome back, folks. We're going to move on now to the right handlebar control. You see all the parts spread out in front of you. These are as I took them off the bike some time ago. Obviously they're good and dirty. Seem to be in reasonably good shape. You'll notice this switch mounting bar right here is bent also just like on the left control, so I'll take that apart and straighten that. I'll re-sleeve the wiring. This wiring is quite a bit simpler on this control than on the other left-hand side. And we have this fairly complicated throttle arrangement here. I'm not real familiar with this design, I have to confess. So I'm guessing that probably, if I recall, goes like that. I'll have to look at some of my old photos. And ultimately, I'll have to figure out how all this goes back together. It's been 18, 20, probably all of 20 months, 18 to 20 months since I took this apart, so I'll have to refresh our memory from our drawings or from our photos. What I'm going to do with this next is I'm going to tank it in the parts cleaning tank, get all this grunge and oil and grease off of it, get it cleaned up a bit, and ultimately these parts, this part will be polished, this will be polished in a tumbler, wiring will be redone. I won't show all of that because you've been through that several times with me. I'll bring you back as I think it's appropriate so you can see where I'm at, but much of this will be done off camera because it'd be repetition for you otherwise. But I'll bring you back at another time as you can see how I'm prepared. Here's the right handlebar control after I've just pulled it out of the solvent cleaning tank. Everything, including the electrical portion here, was cleaned, at least initially, in my part solvent cleaning tank. Just to get the grunge out, there's a lot of crud down in here. And it cleaned up really well. There's one thing that caught my eye, and right here, there's a casting. Looks like it's been broke away. And it looks like it happened some time ago. That's not fresh. There was probably a bit of a, I'm going to, for lack of other term, call it a tunnel or a barrel where this wire went down into, and just to protect the sleeving here. Might have happened at the factory when it was made. I did not recall finding anything that looked like a piece of this casting when I took this apart. So who really knows what might have occurred there, but I don't think it's going to affect the functionality of the unit at all. One other thing that surprised me a little bit pleasantly is this sleeving here is actually in very good condition. It's soft. It's not brittle like the other one was. It's a little dirty in spots, like right there. But this passes through the handlebar anyway, so what I'm thinking I might do is I might just preserve this original sleeving. I don't know if I'm going to have to replace it. I'll clean it, but I might be able to avoid re-sleeving this, even though that wouldn't be terribly complicated. The rest of the parts cleaned up pretty well. I'm going to take this switchgear part here just to get it all broke down, and then the aluminum pieces, that being the two halves of the clamshell, the brake lever, I'm going to take over to my media blast cabinet. It's still not very nice weather outside. It's really cold this morning. It's around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So instead of using sodium bicarbonate, I'm going to use my glass beads in my cabinet. I used it on the left control. It worked out really well. I'll do these initial clean in the blast cabinet, then I'll toss them in the parts polisher for a couple of days, and I think they'll look really good when they come out. These pieces here, well, these two anyway, excuse me, I think I'm just going to clean a little more. I'm not going to put these in a blast cabinet. I don't think there's a reason to. This end cap, and I believe this fits over like that if memory serves. It's been a while. I'm going to have to reference my photos. This is a type of throttle control I have to confess I'm not very familiar with. I might have crossed paths with one of these in the past, but it's been a while, and it looks like it's fairly complex, so I've got to reacquaint myself with how this all goes back together. But in the meantime, this and these pieces here will be polished, these parts will be cleaned, and we'll come back on the other side where I'm going to be putting it back together. Well, here's the parts after they've come out of the bead blast cabinet, glass beads. What I then do, you can see what that looks like there, nice even patina. What I then do is take a little WD-40, spray a little WD-40 on it with some quadruple aught steel wool. That's 4 zeros, very fine steel wool, and I just go over it with a little WD-40 like you can see here. And the reason I do that is I want to close up those pores, because the blasting media, even the glass beads, will tend to open the pores, and I want to close those up before I throw it in the tumbler. So I'll just go over it with a little WD-40 on this steel wool, clean it up really good. Only takes literally a few seconds to do this. Once I've cleaned all the parts with WD-40 in the steel wool, then I will spray them down liberally with brake cleaner, and then I'll go right into the parts tumbler. Everything cleaned and prepared to go back together for the right handlebar control. The aluminum parts have been treated the same way that the left handlebar control was handled. That is, they're media blasted in my cabinet with glass beads and then thrown in my tumbler for 2 or 3 days. So all of these parts were done that way. This end cap, which fits on the end of the twist grip right here, came out particularly good considering how rough this was. This was really battle scarred. It showed some real damage. So I did touch this very lightly with some wet and dry 400 grit sandpaper just to smooth it off, but other than that, bead blasted and polished, and it came out really good. Probably brighter than it was originally, I would guess, but I don't really know. But everything else has been prepared. The wiring, the switch has been cleaned. I am not going to re-sleeve this little harness. The sleeving is in very good condition for its age. It's very soft yet, surprisingly, and I did test it. And this switch works identical to the left handlebar control. That is, it pulls either the yellow or the green to the blue, depending on which way you have the switch positioned. I have to confess, I'm not exactly sure what that switch is for. In looking at the wiring diagram, what confuses me is it appears that the lighting is controlled by the master switch, the ignition switch. It's on the side of the bike, which has the second on position appears to control the lighting, but this also appears to control, well, at least the headlight. I'm not sure about the taillight, looking at the wiring diagram. And so I'm a little bit confused by what that's for, but I guess we'll find that out when we get into this a little further. If anyone's got any thoughts on that, feel free to share it with me. I'd appreciate hearing your comments. For those of you that are more familiar with YL1s than what I am. And all these small parts have been cleaned. This is the bar. Let me get it off the magnet here. This is the bar for the switch. That was also quite bent, if you recall. It had kind of a 30-degree bend in it. And everything else has just been generally cleaned up. The throttle parts are over here, these cast pieces. Those are also in very good condition. I think you can see there. They came out really good. I did, I think, find a source for new screws. Again, these are an odd fastener. These are 5mm by 0.9 pitch. All 4 of these actually. And I think I did find an alternative screw from Yamaha that will work. I've got them ordered. I don't have them yet, but I'll add those at another time. The twist grip itself actually cleaned up really well, surprisingly. This is very grungy, as one would expect in these grooves here. If you get a good shot of that or not. But what I did ultimately is I cleaned it really well with mineral spirits or paint thinner. And then, since there's a little bit of battle damage here and here, somewhere here, I think it's right there, I found using a little acetone, believe it or not, just softened that vinyl enough without damaging it that I could smooth it out. And actually I did it to the other twist grip too. This is the left twist grip, which was had a lot more damage here, and around this lip here. And I used acetone on that as well and just smoothed that out. It's not perfect, but it's in much better condition than it was when I started. There's really not much I can do about that damage on the end there. So eventually I might replace the left one for sure. I'm not sure about the right one since it came out in such good condition. What I'm going to do now is reassemble this clamshell with the switch and the wiring and get this all back together. Obviously the throttle control itself that pulls on the cable that goes down to the oil pump and the carburetors, that will be installed when I put the handlebar on the bike. So these items right here are not going to be installed quite yet, but most of the rest of these items will be put together right now. There's a couple of small items I need to put together. One is I think this is a tensioner for the throttle twist grip. That's my belief. Again, I've never seen one quite like this before, but I think this just puts friction on the throttle right here that fits in like this, and you can, I believe, adjust this little screw right here to put tension on the throttle, and it fits something like that, as you can see. So I'm going to hold that down with my finger and then start this little screw which holds the assembly together. This is a little slotted screwdriver. Again, this is one of my favorite screwdrivers. Goes like that. And I'll adjust that later when I put the throttle together. Now we're going to take the switch. This is the original thumb switch for this switch right here. And this is, again, a very simple assembly. It goes together like that. And then we have this little slotted screw that holds this together. Using my little slotted screwdriver. Snug that up. I'm not sure what DP, I don't know if you can see that there. There's this letters D and P. I have no idea what that stands for. Next we're going to put together the switch itself, and the switch fits into the bottom half of this clamshell. This is the top half in my left hand. And I think I had mentioned once before that this little casting right here, there's supposed to be a little half moon shape casting that comes up a bit. And like we saw on the other control, it captures this wire. And that was broke off when I took it apart, so I don't know whether it came from the factory like that or I don't know. But nonetheless, this switch is quite a bit simpler the way it goes together, and there's obviously a cutout here. As you can see here, part of the casting. Actually, it's not cut out as much as it's cast into place. And this switch should just drop in. I think you can see that, something like that. And then the bar, or the switch, see that there? Get that out of the way, that keeps making noise. This passes through the switch. See the slot? So it goes through the handlebar control, the casting, through the switch itself. It ends up like that. Then we have this little, I think that's probably a 4mm screw. That holds this temporarily like this. I'm just going to put it in place for a moment just so you can see how that ultimately will go. First, however, we have to install this hold down plate. See that there? That actually will fit over the top of this whole assembly. So I just put that screw in so you can see what it's supposed to look like underneath. I'll take that screw out. Now that you've seen it, the way this fits together, you can see a notch right here in the plate, this hold down plate, and that notch aligns with that part of the switch. You can see that brown notched portion that protrudes through right there, and I knew that was going to happen. So what we're going to do is put it right back together again. And then put this over the top. And I think you can see how that's supposed to go, like that. The middle position, left, right. Again, if anybody's got any knowledge of what that switch actually does, appreciate knowing. Eventually I'll figure it out, but for now, I don't really know. And then the clamshell, of course, at the top of the body of the unit will fit like this. And we'll go ahead and temporarily I'm going to put these some of these screws in to hold this. I did just polish these up or clean these up a little bit so they're not quite so rusty. These fasteners, these 5mm by 0.9 pitch fasteners, could be salvaged. They're not in the best of condition. Heads have been beat up a little bit, but they could be replated. And since they're on the bottom, they really wouldn't show. But since I think I found a solution anyway, I don't believe I have to worry about it. And I'll share with you at another time what that solution might look like. And again, I'm just temporarily putting this together to hold it, everything in place. I take it back apart to install the throttle assembly anyway. And then, of course, this is the front brake lever. One thing I didn't mention, by the way, I probably should have earlier. You can see right there that this is cracked. This top piece is it's got a little bit of a hairline crack there. Right there. If this was a rider, in other words, I was going to ride it in anger, I would probably replace this piece. But since it's intended as a show bike only, because I really don't ride my restorations to speak of. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to go ahead and reuse this. But I did want to point out that I found that little crack right there. Brake lever goes in like this. There's an insert. Goes down through the middle. Gotta get everything just aligned just right. There was no nut on the back side of this when I took it apart originally. In other words, as you can see there, coming through, there's supposed to be a nut on there. There wasn't, so this can actually just pop out. I have ordered new nuts and washers for this, by the way, so those are coming with the new screws. So outside of mounting this on the handlebar with the throttle components right here, that will be the subject of another video when we put this all together on the bike. We're going to consider this restoration of the right handlebar grip complete. The next operation is going to be installing the handlebars along with the left and right controls that we just finished restoring, hooking up the throttle assembly, and working our way towards the front of the bike. Again, that's going to be the next series of videos. Any issues, thoughts, questions, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.